Top of the morning to you. Welcome, Boise Startup Week. I'm really excited to host a fireside chat today with Jeff Flitton, CTO at Vacasa. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thanks, TM. Nice to be here.
Yeah. Happy Friday morning to you.
Yeah, same to you.
Excited to talk to you. For full disclosure, I used to work at Vacasa back in the day, so I have some history at your organization, which makes this even more exciting to talk about. But for starters, let's get our audience a little bit of context as to what Vacasa does and what industry you guys are active in.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people don't realize this, but Vacasa is actually North America's largest vacation rental management company. So we care for about 25,000 vacation homes across North America and also in Costa Rica and Belize. Really, what it's natural for people to say, "Oh, like Airbnb or Vrbo," and really what separates us from those companies is, which are basically booking sites, is that we have a full service business model. So we take care of every aspect of the home. We manage them from a marketing and booking standpoint, but also we take care of maintenance and repairs to the home. We help with tax compliance and permitting issues as well. So it's really analogous to what traditionally has been a small in-market property management company that looks after these homes in every respect. We use technology. What differentiates us from those small players is that we use technology to bring scale and efficiency to the business. It's a super complex business because every home we manage is unique in some way. So managing that complexity at scale requires quite a bit of use of proprietary technology. And our full service model really requires a broad platform as well. So we do, since we manage every aspect of the home, our platform has to be quite broad. And since we do it at our scale, there aren't a lot of off-the-shelf solutions for us. So we lean heavily on proprietary systems for property management, for field management, ticketing, our online travel agency, Vacasa.com. Like, we have to supply kind of end-to-end a proprietary stack to do those things and do them well.
So as you were describing, the vacation rental management industry as a whole is still highly fragmented, a lot of mom and pop shops. That's at least what people typically associate with a vacation rental management company. And your use of technology being the differentiator. Vacasa had recently just finished an acquisition, right? And I believe you guys purchased Wyndham.
That's right. So we purchased Wyndham Vacation Rentals, which was a division of Wyndham Destinations, the Wyndham a lot of you might have heard of at the hotel and resort level. So we purchased them just over a year ago. And that added to our portfolio about 10,000 additional properties. And really, we were already the largest, but it put us, several lengths ahead of our next closest competitor. So this year has been, we've been busy integrating their people and their systems and their processes into our own.
Yeah, that was really big news, and it hit the Boise newspapers. That's how I found out. But what I want to talk about is, being a fragmented industry, being heavily, dominated by mom and pop shops, Vacasa being one of the companies that's bringing technology to the industry. Is it fair to say that the industry as a whole, you said there are no off-the-shelf, products we can buy and plug and play into our system? Is it because it is, let's call it an immature or a developing industry, and Vacasa is sort of one of the agents bringing tech to it? Is that how our viewers can think about that?
Yeah, I think so. Our industry historically has lagged behind many industries in terms of technology adoption. There are more players out there for sure. And I think, as a company that builds, our core platform is built internally. We welcome the development of that marketplace. It's really interesting to see where the market heads. And I would say that we've been in a unique position to help influence how those tools get designed and built. So we've definitely seen some of our DNA out in the greater ecosystem. But I think it's a totally fair statement to say that the average property management company makes very limited use of technology.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's talk about the travel industry. I mean, you just explained that Vacasa is a turnkey manager, full service manager of vacation homes. We all watch the news. We all think we know what happened to the travel industry. I think earlier this morning, there was a statistic shared on NPR, was something along the lines of air travel is still down 60% when compared to last year today. And so tell us a little bit about how the global pandemic has impacted Vacasa as an organization.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. At the start of the pandemic, travel came to a screeching halt, and we were immediately impacted. So we saw mass reservation cancellations. Obviously, we have our guests tend to book early for big important trips to them, family gatherings or holidays or the summer vacation. So we have at any given time tens of thousands of reservations on the books, and we experienced substantial cancellation volume when the pandemic first hit. And we were faced with some pretty tough decisions. So, like many companies, we had to cut costs. We even temporarily shut down a lot of our field operations and furloughed folks. But we were in early May. We were very fortunate. Once people felt comfortable traveling again, we saw an immediate turnaround. So professionally managed vacation rentals became the preferred accommodation type. What used to be an alternative accommodation really became the mainstay. And we worked really quickly to build our business back up and support the owners of the properties we manage, but also our guests. And so for us, it was a much truncated impact versus, say, the airline industry or something like that. I think it made us stronger and a little more focused. So it definitely tested our agility as a business, and it forced us to reevaluate some of our priorities.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That's very interesting to me on how the business pivoted, how you adjusted strategy and priorities. But when I think about vacation rentals, like you said, as an alternative accommodation, just on paper, I would think, hey, a private home to myself and my family, probably a wiser choice than booking a hotel and being, co-located next to a lot of people I potentially don't know. In terms of the operational side, did you guys change anything about how you clean a home, how you advertise the home? Did you find ways to message it differently to your customers and giving them the comfort of booking?
Yeah, absolutely. So we kicked off a program that we call the Vacasa Premium Clean, which is now our standard clean for all stays. It wasn't just a branding thing. We made some meaningful changes to the amount of resource we bring to bear on a clean and the amount of time we take to do it. And we were very fortunate that our operations, our COO had the foresight to procure a lot of personal protective equipment at the outset of the pandemic, so that we were able to provide the gear that our housekeepers would need to safely clean those homes as well. So we did spend a lot of time highlighting our professional cleans. Our inventory is bookable on Vacasa.com, but it's also bookable on a number of other OTAs like Airbnb and Vrbo. And we really wanted to differentiate ourselves everywhere we could in terms of the fact that this is a professionally managed home. And it turns out that's meaningful to guests. So more so than ever during the pandemic. So it's important to them to know that this property is being managed and cleaned by professionals versus someone who owns has an extra home that they put on Airbnb and they clean personally or something like that. Those were some changes we made.
Yeah, that would make a big difference in my booking behavior too, if I knew that it was professionally cleaned. I shared this story with you, but I ended up staying in a vacation home during the pandemic because my house flooded. Prior to getting into the vacation home, we had to stay in a hotel. So I back-to-back experienced staying at a hotel during the pandemic and during Father's Day, and then staying in a vacation rental. And I think it was at that point in time when I thought to myself, I think Vacasa is going to be okay. Because me as a consumer, I'm experiencing this differentiated product, and I really like it compared to what I just experienced. I was thinking of you guys. Let's put it that way. So pandemic hits, travel comes to a screeching halt. Demand falls. Goes downhill. Vacasa shuts down. You pivot. You adjust. How did and with demand picking up, how did all of this impact the technology side of Vacasa? So first of all, I'd like to understand, in terms of your team, what did your team have to go through? Did you have to downsize it? Did you have to restructure the team? Tell me a little bit about some of the operational aspects of the CTO managing the team at Vacasa.
Yeah. So we did have to make some hard choices, and we did have to downsize the team somewhat. A lot of that was in the form of furloughing, and we were very fortunate in that while we had originally planned a multi-month furlough period, we were able to bring those furloughed folks back much more rapidly because of that return in demand that I mentioned. And because it became readily apparent that once demand returned, even before it did, so during the month of April, we started to see what was likely to happen from a regulatory perspective and from a behavioral perspective with our customers. And we recognized that we were going to need our tech folks, as many as we could find, very soon, to start building out some changes to our platform that would allow us to provide the same levels of service that we typically would, but during this pandemic. So we use that in addition to that sort of rapid evolution of our product roadmaps and changes there. And I did use it as an opportunity to reorganize some things. So we have been for 10 years now, we have been a fast growth company, and that is really exciting. That's actually why I came to Vacasa, and it's what keeps me here. But fast growth over prolonged periods of time puts a lot of strain on an organization in terms of how it's built and how it's assembled and which people are in which positions, and how the work is sort of distributed across that organization. So I took it as an opportunity to align, basically to segment our engineering teams into guest-facing systems, owner-facing systems, and what we call platform, which is essentially the core platform. It involves a lot of our financial tools, and it involves sort of the core APIs that get data in and out of our core transactional system. So I used it as an opportunity to reorganize our engineering group.
Okay, and it sounds like you reorganized with sort of a let's call it a subject matter specific, guest facing versus platform facing. How big is this team that you then segmented into these various groups?
So we're at about 120 people right now in engineering and IT, and another 20 or so in product.
Wow, that's a lot more people than when I was there, and they're spread across the world, I assume.
Yeah, so we have 4 delivery centers. Primarily, they're Boise, Portland, Oregon, Santiago, Chile, and Auckland, New Zealand.
So has this specialization? How has it impacted your team? Are they less exposed to the stresses of a fast-growing company? Has it palletized the workload? Like how has it, I guess, functionally affected them?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I'm making organizational decisions, I like to think in terms of cognitive load. So it's whether someone is busy, whether someone is at 100% of their sustainable productivity, 120%, 80%, you name it. Cognitive load matters. So if I am asking my engineering managers, for instance, to have a deep understanding of the systems that face owners, guests, and platform, and have a deep understanding of the customers that use those systems, then I'm asking too much of them, in my opinion. As I mentioned, our platform is quite broad. And that's, if I ask them to do that, they will spend most of their cognitive overhead will go to context switching and to continually trying to maintain their mental model. And what I want them doing is making important decisions and executing those decisions, right? So this was an intentional shift to narrow their cognitive load to what I think is a reasonable load, and then to get them deep understanding of their customers and their systems that their teams look after.
Okay, so cognitive load, that's the first time I've heard it said in that way. Now I've heard it in many different ways. So as you manage your team, the cognitive load management then segmented them into these various groups. That's pretty fascinating in terms of the context switching. As you said what you just said, I was thinking of myself, and I go, yeah, I do that. Oh yeah, I lose too much overhead energy doing that. Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, it resonates with me. And so when you have groups, hyper focused on one area of the business, how do you then assure that the other parts of the business, that the other groups in your team are working on, integrate with one another? In other words, if an engineer doesn't worry about the customer facing side and then also the operational, the part that faces your maintenance folks and your house cleaners, if you don't think about how those two interact or overlap, how do you ensure that there's still alignment there?
Yeah, so in addition to the changes I named, one of the other changes we made is we built a proper product management organization under a chief product officer. And we were very lucky to find a great CPO. But the whole product team now, which is very much a counterpart to engineering, that our highest functioning teams have a great product manager and a great engineering manager, and they're like two sides of the same coin. Essentially, they move in lockstep. They understand one another's needs. One translates for the other when necessary. And really having that formalized under a product leader has been super important for us. So our product managers meet, our directors of product meet to make sure that those different appendages of the organization are working in concert. Our engineering managers meet, and they all meet together on a regular basis. So we have these road mapping sessions where we'll lay out what everyone would like to do and what they feel they must do, and then we essentially figure out what the happy path is through all of the things we'd like to do. And all the things we must do. So it very much does require additional sort of road mapping and planning, and audibles are always called anytime you're executing a roadmap, right? So anytime you start delivering that work, at some point your priorities shift, and so it's an ongoing. It's not just a quarterly activity; it's an ongoing activity to make sure we articulate any changes in priority and changes in direction.
So you paired a product manager with an engineering manager. That's an interesting approach. And just to say it out loud, I think, as you described the furloughs early on, and I was thinking about your team there, tech talent is hard to come by here in Boise. And I think timing wise, the fact that you guys were able to temporarily furlough them, but still bring them back because you saw trends in April as to what this could look like when this demand is going to pick back up. That's really good news, I think, both for Vacasa, but also for our ecosystem here in our talent pool. So as you talk about your team, and I understand the restructure, and as it's unfolding, are you currently growing as a team? Are you set where you are? Help me understand what the trajectory kind of looks like over the next few months as demand is assumingly picking back up.
Yeah, we are growing right now. So we're actually hiring quite a few positions in software engineering, data engineering, cloud database administrators, cloud infrastructure, whether you want to call them site reliability engineers or DevOps engineers, and business intelligence analysts. So we have quite a few positions open right now, actually. And one of the things, obviously, that we've experienced during the pandemic is the entire team working full remote. So it's gone quite well for us, and we feel like it's a thing we can continue to do in part. So in a lot of cases, a particular team had traditionally been in one of those 4 delivery centers that I named. Now we're open to those teams being spread across delivery centers. And for certain roles, I should mention we're also looking for security engineers as well. For those roles, for those more specialized roles, we're willing to entertain full remote as well, for kind of niche skill sets. So it's been a real lesson for us in terms of what can be accomplished full remote and how open we should be in the future. But we do that. All that said, I still have I personally, and most of the people on the team, really enjoy the collaborative spirit that we enjoy in all our offices, and including the Boise office. And I'm very much looking forward to a day where we can bring all those people back together and meet for the first time a bunch of people that we've already hired and have never met in person. We'll continue to hire those people over the coming months.
Well, that's exciting. So it sounds like your team is growing. Vacasa continues to invest in technology. Earlier you said one of the main differentiators about Vacasa is that Vacasa brings technology to the industry. And so as a former Vacasa employee, I recall going to trade shows and meeting our competitors. And as soon as I would say that I'm from Vacasa, their demeanor would change. Their body language they were defeated in a way because they knew they couldn't sell me anything. But at the same time, they were really interested in the things that we were working on and doing. And I saw a few, this is maybe about 4 years ago, a few companies sort of copy paste and look at Vacasa sort of an industry leader and picking up some of the strategies. Have you seen other competitors or the marketplace in general adopt technologies that Vacasa maybe hasn't invented, but really brought to the industry?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there have been companies that are not property management companies that build tooling that attempts to accomplish the same thing that our internal platform does. And there have been other property management companies who endeavor to do what we do and to bring the same kind of technology to bear. It's typically a pretty big challenge for them, but there are definitely I've definitely observed some of that in my travels as well.
Yeah, and it seems, I'm specifically thinking of the pricing tool, right? That was always the big demystifying thing where, fascinating to me, Vacasa, like you said, builds these tools in-house, right? I mean, this is an in-house team building all these tools. Meanwhile, really, it's Vacasa as a full service, property management and vacation rental management company. Coming from an outside industry, it was always fascinating to me how businesses whose bread and butter is to build those tools. In other words, they don't manage any homes. I mean, that's all they do. They're a B2B company, did not do as good of a job at developing those tools as Vacasa did. And so that was always, the edge that I saw Vacasa having over these other, competitors, and not even competitors, service providers who would look to our product set. And here I am, getting all nostalgic and talking Vacasa up, taking up what you're supposed to be doing. But all joking aside, the corporate culture of Vacasa was something that I was drawn to in the early days. We talked about this earlier. Very youthful, very agile, light on its feet kind of organization, right? And I know, since I've left, Vacasa has grown tremendously, right? And so tell me a little bit about how in your experience, the corporate culture that you're experiencing, how has it shifted? Now, I know from the time I've left and in recent months, Eric Brion, the founder and CEO, has left. So you guys have a new CEO. It'd be kind of nice to hear about him or her a little bit. And then, has working from home, not being able to go to the office, which was such a big draw for everyone that worked at Vacasa, that culture that you're talking about. Has that changed? And I heard you say you can't wait for the day to get everyone back together. So I'm assuming it has, but I'd like to hear from you how you're experiencing the Vacasa culture these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, to address the CEO change, yes, absolutely. Our founder did step down in January of this year, so prior to the pandemic. We brought in. We were very fortunate to have access to some pretty incredible candidates to fill his very big shoes. Our CEO is now Matt Roberts, who's the CEO at OpenTable. Matt brings a wealth of experience, including private and public company experience. And he has a strong finance background as well, a strong financial background as a CFO prior to that. Matt, it turns out, has been a great force for Vacasa. The pandemic forced us to be agile, and Matt and some of the great executive hires we've made since have given us fresh perspective on how to rethink some of our sometimes most core operational processes, our core marketing and sales processes. So it's been a great opportunity to inject the company with fresh perspectives on a number of items. So it's been really positive. In terms of the culture change with everyone working full remote, I would say we're still very much riding on the relationships that we built prior to. So we're fortunate in that most of the people in my department have been around for quite a long time. We all have worked together in person, and prior to the pandemic, we used to travel quite often between our delivery centers. So we have a lot of good relationships we've already built. And I would say the events of this year have sort of have rapidly catalyzed a lot of that sort of bonding. We now have this common experience of going through this thing together, which has brought people together even more. I would say our team collaboration is actually up right now, our cross-team collaboration, which is really interesting. And I think that is in part because of the reorg that I mentioned, but also I think people are craving the some form of interaction right now, and that cross team communication and collaboration is one way to get that. So it has Zoom fatigue is real, and I think it affects different people to varying degrees. But our teams have been incredibly resilient in the face of all this, and I'm incredibly proud of what we've accomplished, especially in terms of organizational agility and rapid feature development during this time.
Yeah, and look, Jeff, when I started at Vacasa, I was very much used to going to an office, working with people. If I needed to go visit a customer or see someone, I'd get on a plane and I'd travel over there. Working at Vacasa initially really exposed me to how it is to work with remote teams. This is years before the pandemic. I think Vacasa as an organization was really equipped well to make the shift, because so many of our operational folks were decentralized already, and we had to use those technology tools. And so one thing that you talk about that I find interesting is continuing to build on those relationships that you and your teammates had built with each other, right? And an interesting part to me, and we talked about this before the recording, and I want you to touch on this, is you and your team came from another organization to Vacasa, and you've obviously grown the team since. But look, I recall sitting at Vacasa and not ever having heard anything about Boise Startup Week or Trailhead. Was totally ignorant to those two things. And here comes a group of, I think it was 12 or 13, engineers walking through our M&A department, which everyone in corp dev just shuts their laptop and goes, "Who are these people? They're not supposed to be here." And what I later found out is that was the team from Ballyhoo doing the startup crawl for Boise Startup Week. And so can you tell our audience a little bit about that experience and how you guys ended up from Ballyhoo at Vacasa, and what role, if any, Startup Week played in that? I think that would tickle our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was 3 years ago, almost to the day. I was the director of engineering, so I was in charge of all engineering at a local Boise startup called Ballyhoo. It was an advertising technology company. The company had been acquired a year prior by a private equity firm, and a year later they swooped in and said, "Gosh, we'd love to keep you all, but if you're going to stay, we need you to move to Chicago." I think there was anyone who spent any significant amount of time in Boise recognizes that we have an exceptionally great quality of life here. I have outstanding outdoor recreation opportunities on my doorstep, and I think many of us feel like we get to live a really nice mix of some of the aspects of a big city with some of the aspects of more rural life as well. And so I personally made a decision that I was not interested in relocating. But it turns out that all my engineers came to the same conclusion as well. So I had heard that Vacasa, this sort of upstart company that had an office in Boise, they didn't have any engineering in Boise. They never had it. It had always been in Portland. And I'd heard they were interested in changing that. So I told my team, like, well, the startup crawl is happening. Why don't you go check this place out? And so they did. Almost all of them went, and they came back and reported back, and they were pretty enthused. And that's when I started having a number of us started having some discussions with Vacasa, and we were very fortunate. They ended up hiring myself and all of the engineers from all the software engineers from Ballyhoo, and product person, and also our VP of digital, Caleb Donegan, came over as well. So it's every day is kind of like, well, when we were coming into the office, every day was kind of like a reunion in that respect, because a lot of the folks that I had worked with for 4 years prior, I've now worked 3 years at Vacasa as well.
Very cool. And the amazing part about that too is it all happened in a matter of days. I don't think 2 days went by until that entire team came back and were introduced to us as fellow Vacasa employees. And we're like, wait, what just happened? Huge win for Vacasa. I think also huge win for that talent pool and yourself, as you had to sort of contemplate, well, I guess you made the decision to not relocate, which I can totally relate to. So that's cool in terms of, Startup Week did play a role and was able to facilitate, right? It sounded like you already had heard about the potential opportunity, but we were just a facilitator in that. And that's pretty cool. So Jeff, in terms of the typical project kind that your team, has on their roadmap before and after pandemic, what has changed?
Yeah, so we have always applied a lot of resources against our primary core systems, like our property management and reservation management systems. So when somebody calls into our call center, they have to have a system that allows them to manage and see all aspects of a reservation and a guest. But we also historically we provide that online travel agency, that booking platform, Vacasa.com. We have channel integrations that we built ourselves with all of the big players in the booking industry. And we have a data science-led series of initiatives around using our sort of unprecedented industry data to make informed decisions that benefit our guests and owners, and allow us to operate even more efficiently. So proprietary pricing systems you mentioned earlier, and scheduling systems that allow us to manage a vast distributed field workforce in the most optimal way. So making sure that we minimize travel between cleans, and are as humane an employer as we can be in terms of giving people the right amount of hours in the right places at the right time and doing that consistently. So we have all of those typical projects, and we when the pandemic hit, we rapidly recognized, as I mentioned, that some roadmap changes were going to have to be made as soon as the regulatory environment became apparent. And as it did, we had to implement a few things rapidly. First off, when all those cancellations hit, we really needed to formalize the process by which people could get refunds. We needed to make that self-serve and relatively frictionless, and future stay credits. So future stay credits had never been a formal concept in our platform. We had kind of a workaround process that allowed us to manage those. And we rapidly during April, when the company was largely quiet, we in the field. It's very busy in Central. We engineered that feature and brought it to bear, and we did it in really short time. We did it in days, low weeks, which was really impressive to see. So implementing future stay credits and refunds as a frictionless first-class concept was really important. It allowed our call centers to not be completely underwater. It made our guests happy, and allowed us, for those who wanted to keep their credits with us and use them for a future stay, it allowed us to keep those as well, which was great. In addition to that, regulatory changes were made in a number of markets that varied. I mean, there was no top-down, single approach to how to manage vacation rentals in all these markets. So from a regulatory perspective, we had to be quite nimble as well. And we had to implement a concept called rest days that we'd never had before. Typically, it works to our advantage and our owner's advantage to turn over a property as quickly as possible. So if someone's checking out in the morning, just like a hotel might, it's great to clean that property as rapidly as possible, and to be able to have someone come in that evening and occupy the property, a new guest. So eliminating those holes in the calendar had ever been our charge, was basically to find calendar fragmentation and thwart it, essentially, was a big part of our pricing and yield optimization systems. Now we had to introduce a concept that actually introduced synthetic fragmentation, and that was not a thing we had typically handled. So we had to rapidly introduce the concept of rest days on a per market and sometimes per unit basis to make sure that we were complying with the guidance that the CDC had issued, as well as any local authorities, to make sure that we were actually letting that property sit unoccupied for the right amount of time.
Did that compromise the booking optimization that you just talked about, having a rest day?
It's definitely a headwind, but and will remain so until it's no longer needed. I would say it varies wildly from market to market how much of a headwind it is. But we've also seen some other changes in the industry, like an increase in the average length of booking, that have largely offset that headwind. So where our previous average length of stay was around 3 nights, it's up to 4 now. So we saw it percentage-wise a substantial increase in average length of stay, and it's a pretty long tail. I mean, at the 90th percentile, we're seeing weeks-long, several weeks-long stays at this point. So because that pattern has changed, it's largely offset the fragmentation that was introduced by rest days.
Interesting. So it sounds like workarounds were in place for certain functions, and then the pandemic sort of made a business case to solidify those into, system implementations. And so that the fact that you had reorganized your team into these focus groups, that must have enabled them to respond to these things very quickly. I mean, you talk about house to house, even, let alone state to state differences in regulations. But that structure must have really enabled you guys to hit the ground running.
It did. I would say everybody was motivated. I mean, there was a strong spirit of, we're all in this together and we're going to get through this together. And we want to make this the best possible company for folks to come back to when they do. And so, yeah, we got to work. We were busy. It was an exciting time. I mean, I got to sling some code again. I haven't done that in a while. So it was all hands on deck, and it was a common experience, I think, that we'll all remember.
Look, Jeff, we're about out of time, but I wanted to end our fireside chat with one question. Look, as I talked to you about the changes that you made to your team, and you talked to me about cognitive fatigue, I think that's what you called it, cognitive load, and it just strikes me that you're just really well equipped in terms of the tools and the management approach to changing teams. As a CTO, do you just know these things? Are you part of a mastermind CTO group? Do you solicit any kind of mentorship or coaching when it comes to these kind of things? Like other CTOs that are listening to this and going, boy, what the hell is cognitive load? I don't even know. Do you go out to kind of continue your education, or just your tool set?
Yeah, I do. I have used, historically, I've used conferences as an opportunity to go get some additional information. I do have a couple of mentors that I maintain, one at a business I would say is of comparable size and agility, and one that's at a much larger, publicly traded, decades old business as well. And I read. I've used the pandemic as an opportunity to listen to books while I walk, to read books in the evening, and to attend fully virtual conferences. But in particular, if organizational structure is something that that anyone out there is particularly interested in, specific to software engineering, there's a book called Team Topologies that's it's a little dry, but it's a great read. It dives into sort of the organizational theory in general, how it's applied to engineering. And it even talks about some sticky subjects like decomposing a monolithic platform into discrete services. So there's an architectural aspect to it too. So if you want to geek out on organization and architecture stuff, I would highly recommend it.
Very cool. Yeah. One more time, the name of the book?
Team Topologies.
Team Topologies. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. We'll watch it rise on the Amazon list of bestsellers after this interview is aired.
Yeah, I really can I send you an Amazon referral link so I get credit for that? Or?
Oh, I thought you already did. Oh, okay. Yeah. Go ahead and do that. That's a good call, Jeff. Look, I want to thank you for your time this morning. Our audience was very eager to hear from someone at Vacasa. We all watched and read the news on how Vacasa pivoted and shifted and adjusted in the face of the pandemic. As a Startup Week community, we are all very grateful and happy for Vacasa that you've weathered the storm and you are now again looking at a roadmap of growth. Vacasa is a very important stakeholder and also player in this ecosystem here locally in Boise, and I know in Portland as well. And so just to say, Startup Week is rooting for you guys, and we're glad that you're doing okay. And with that, thanks for taking the time, man. Friday morning, carved it out, made it happen.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. This was great. And I'd say the feeling is mutual. We very much appreciate what Startup Week is doing and the culture you're helping build in this valley and cultivate. I think it's really important.
Thank you very much. There you have it, startup folks. Jeff Flitton, CTO at Vacasa. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.